Alright guys, it has been around 36 years since the former Rolling Stones member and keyboardist Ian Stewart has died. So eventually, Andrew Robert Stewart was actually featured in a YouTube video which actually consisted of musicians who passed away from the 1980s to the 1980 to the till 1990s. So apparently, it's been around 36 years since the keyboardist died. So eventually, when Stewart actually grew up in the college farm in the East Newarkshire of Scotland, he was raised in South London. Stewart was often called Stu, was playing piano when he was 6 years old. He took a banjo and played the amateur groups on both instruments. Stewart especially loved the rhythm and the blues, boogie-woogie blues, and big band jazz. He was the first to respond to Brian Jones' advertisement on the Jazz News on the 2nd of May, 1962. So, eventually for Brian Jones, because of this, Brian Jones apparently got himself arrested for cannibalism, like cannibalism drugs, which I do believe the Rolling Stones members had to kick Brian Jones out because of his alcoholic and drug addiction. I'm not really gonna mention like what kind of drug is this, but it's really scary to a lot of people for this. So eventually, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards joined in June, with Dick Taylor on the bass and Mick Avory. And then, after Mick Avory left the Rolling Stones, he was part of the Kings band on the drums. So the first gig was named the Rolling Stones on the Marquee Club on July 12, 1962. So eventually, I'm just gonna really say this. Once Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts joined the Rolling Stones, there was actually a series of bassists and drummers. So what really did happen by then? Not gonna go through all of them, but I know this is a very short summary to you guys. I don't want to make this video that long, so eventually, during that time, the band's manager, Andrew Robert said to Stewart that no longer be on stage. Because of this, I will just say that not everyone was actually interested in seeing the Rolling Stones. And apparently, I would just say this, it's probably because not many people are interested in listening to the Rolling Stones. And just because of this, it's just their opinion. So apparently, Stewart remained quiet for the band's drug abuse. So apparently, it just thinks that it quotes this. I think he hooked upon like lots of sin in it. So eventually, on other work, he began to contribute to Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll and the Boogie from STU, and he also contributed to the song Bad Penny Blues. Unfortunately, in 1983 of Undercover and was present during the 1985 work of Dirty Work released in 1986. In early December of 1985, Stewart began having respiratory problems. On the 12th of December, he had a problem and he suffered a heart attack and died in the waiting room. Stewart was 47 years old. So eventually what I was saying is Stewart was actually the second former musician to die at just a young age of 47. First being Brian Jones, who drowned in a swimming pool back in 1967. He was 27 years old when he died, and this was actually part and the beginning of the 27th Club. Ever since Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison had joined Brian Jones in the 27th Club, since they all died on the 27th at the age of 27. And he was the second person to die, and the third person to die from the Rolling Stones, who was a former drummer, was Charlie Watts. So anyways, guys, that's all I really need to say for now. Remembering Ian Stewart, the musician from the former Rolling Stones. Because of this, he was removed from the lineup in May of 1963. So eventually, I would just say that from 1961 to 1985, he was part of the Rolling Stones, if I'm not mistaken, but he was inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame along with the rest of the band in 1969. But anyways, guys, this is me signing off.